As frontman for the mighty Led Zeppelin, Robert Plant was the voice of rock for a generation of men and women, fusing raw sexual power and mystical longing with his powerhouse vocals, long blonde mane and strutting stage presence. But what do you do next when the world's greatest rock band crashes and burns? How do you pick yourself up and move on? Alone. For the last 30 years, Robert Plant has been forging a solo career, sometimes struggling with the baggage of rock superstardom, revealing more selves in a number of unexpected collaborations. He's followed his muse wherever it has taken him, from the deserts of Africa to the hills of Tennessee. This is Robert Plant's story, in his own words.
The cards fell very favourably for me. I went to a grammar school which was part of the average town, which had a really, really creative and very flamboyant art college. People actually got scholarships to come from around Europe to study and to create. So there was a kind of great vibration in it, what would normally be a little old town on the edge of the Black Country. Folk clubs sprang up and jazz clubs. I was able to hang around on the edge of all these little societies so I could hear John Coltrane or Woody Guthrie or Dixieland jazz. I could hear unaccompanied singing of beautiful Scottish airs and all this while the foundries of the Black Country beat their great rhythm, you know. As most towns in the early 60s had a town hall or similar. So through the town came the Pretty Things and the Walker Brothers. See the Mersey Beats roll into Stourbridge with a blue and white American station wagon filled up with equipment and these renegade guys who ran off with all our teen queens. There would be the boys fighting in Dudley to the rhythm of Eddie Cochran and Gene Vincent. There would be bohemian meetings on the top of the hills with people singing great Big Bill Brunsey pieces, and there'd be so many different things going on. Whatever's kind of come my way as far as my own musical dalliances has come from having a keen ear and really wanting to explore. Oh, that'll be the wife. Oh, I haven't got one. That's kind of neat, isn't it?
You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy.
Robert Plant didn't only listen to everything, he wanted to perform. If American rock and roll inspired many young kids to pick up a guitar or learn to play the drums, Plant was inspired by the strange power and sexual charge of its upfront vocal.
When I first heard the rock and roll singers, there was a swagger and a lurch in the voice, which was otherworldly to me.
Kiss me, baby. Ooh, it feels good.
I suppose I was quite interested in my stamp collection and Romano-British history. I mean, I was a little grammar school boy and I could hear this kind of calling through the airwaves.
One night with you.
I could hear this voice transmuting into something completely different than the spoken word and way different to Dickie Valentine and all the kind of British crooners who were just about to get their P45s.
By 1962, the hippest audiences in Britain were enthralled to American blues artists, some of whom had begun touring the UK. They were the trailblazers of what would become, in the hands of young white kids, the British blues boom.
Got my mojo working, buddy. Just don't worry on you.
type music that we listened to was sexy, it was alluring, it had great driving beats and rhythms, which we couldn't even get near.
I'm going down to San to get me a mojo, hey.
You know, you're there with every single breath of what the guy's doing. And I suppose really I wouldn't have been able to put that into words at the time. I was just mesmerized.
I wanted to tell everybody in the neighborhood, but I get nervous. I'm a man, do I get nervous?
If you go back to when I first started doing it, I mean, I was 14 and a half years old.
Nervous man, and
I mean, all I was doing was getting through the song and getting to the end and getting away with it was what it was. It was great.
Plant would later pay his dues at the school of British blues that centred around musician and impresario Alexis Corner, whose small basement club in Ealing became the mecca for every would-be blues performer in the UK.
He was a fantastic catalyst. He was almost the home of all the sort of dewy-eyed kids who wanted to play, you know, rhythm and blues. Nurturing work with the Stones and Jimmy Page, myself.
I'm gonna tell you how it's gonna be. You're gonna give your love to me.
So many people came by and through that school of British blues, where there was something going on, but it's a hybrid. At that period in time, the great change was coming. You know, you go from Gene Vincent and that kind of precocious, sexually charged rock music into the whole social commentary that was developing. The whole idea of a psychedelic movement in the UK was based on a drug experience to some degree, but there was no foundation for it. There was no train of thought and a process that actually allowed the thing to grow out of the coffee bar folk scenes of Greenwich Village and the Troubadour in LA. We didn't really have that. So sadly, the British psychedelic movement was almost trivial and some sort of novelty thing.
Close my eyes and drift away. Yeah.
So after the various bands that I'd been in, I ended up with the Band of Joy and with John Bonham and heading into a blues-based zone, but by that time incorporating the effects that Dylan had created in the American culture of the West Coast.
The Band of Joy combined blues and psychedelia, songs and extended musical workouts. A little taste of flower power, but with an emphasis on the power.
Something happened here. What it is ain't exactly clear.
Bonzo was totally and absolutely devoted to getting it right. Everything that he listened to, he could go beyond. So not only could he recreate it, but he could take it somewhere new. He knew that he was a powerhouse among drummers. So he was pretty hard to deal with, and so was I, because I felt exactly the same about what I was doing. Even though we were obnoxious to everybody else, we seemed to have great affinity for each other. You know, there was a lot of edge to it, and what it did was it meant that neither of us could slacken off. So the Band of Joy was quite an energy centre.
I'm crying, baby.
I mean, I hear it and its effects in the early stuff that we did with Jimmy and John Paul. Definitely, because we pushed it to try and make it so special that it was earth-shattering. And we did it. We did it. Between greatnesses, to be knocked out.
You had an abuse, telling all of your lies. Sweet little baby, baby, how you hypnotize.
I've always felt slightly remote and also slightly, not insular, but my role in all that really was peppering the musical moments on the more elongated pieces of music. I always think about it as being that little melody that runs through the middle of all that great playing.
But first, hear this.
It's cool, it's groovy, it's #1, the Led Zeppelin.
The Led, what?
The Led Zeppelin, but I'm afraid that you and other dads like you, Bob, may never have heard of them. But this British group has made musical history today. Readers of the Melody Maker have voted them the top world group. The significance is that the Beatles have held this title for 8 years.
The year is 1970. Only 2 years after their formation, Led Zeppelin have already become an international success story. The greatest rock band in the world.
Shake for me, yeah. I wanna be your better man.
Globe-trotting tours, chart-topping albums and scandalous stories of rock and roll excess were already part of a growing Zeppelin mythology, made all the more tantalising by their increasing avoidance of the media. TV interviews were extremely rare.
Do you think as musicians you'll be able to last as long as 8 years? Do you think you'll be inventive enough?
I remember when I was, let's go back a few years, when I first went to see the Beatles, because we've mentioned them a few times, it was to look at them, you know. It wasn't, you didn't really bother what you were listening to.
Yeah.
And today, it's not what you are, it's what
Yes.
you're playing.
You must be quite rich now. What's it like having money?
To have money at last is just another figure in my mind of mass acceptance, which is what we all work for. I mean, everybody, however much they like to deny the fact, really wants, in the end, to be accepted by the majority of people for being either a talent or a commodity.
So invincible were Led Zeppelin that they became a band apart, in a world where hugeness and greatness, record sales and artistic achievement become thoroughly confused.
There's a consensus of opinion that decides that greatness will survive. And there's huge, vast pockets of other music, which are equally as spectacular, but for marginally different reasons. They never quite got that huge acceptance and that mass hysteria. So a miss is as good as a mile in a way, you know. It's that great thing about How Did Forever Changes, the Arthur Lee Love album. How did that never, ever be successful? And yet it continues forever to always be part of the soundtrack of millions of people's lives. Funny old game, that.
Zeppelin, and Robert Plant in particular, had cornered the market in raw rock and roll sexuality. Something that now sits uneasily with the man who, back in the day, epitomised the rock god.
The estimation of any group of people about any one person is always generally a million miles from where it's really at. So therefore, if I have a surge in creativity and it sticks to the wall for a while, which is what's been happening recently, points of reference for the media are so cliched, it's frightening. You cannot judge anybody's work by just going to the spikes and saying, because my spikes are the bits that nobody really thinks about. My spikes were getting off the plane in 1972 and driving into the Atlas Mountains with a tape machine, exploring Berber singers in the fields walking through kind of farmers' markets in the middle of nowhere with the rattle of drums in a corner. I mean, those were the moments that are so far away from rock god, but they were spectacular.
But with the unpredictable highs came unexpected lows. In 1977, Robert Plant lost his oldest son, Carrack, to a virus at the age of 5. 3 years later, drummer John Bonham also died, aged 32.
All of us individually have been thinking about what would happen next, no matter what. You know, because the kind of illusion had run its course. I'd already, as part of my beautiful family, lost my boy. And then you think, I really have to decide what to do, and I applied to become a teacher in the Rudolf Steiner education system, and I was accepted to go to Teachers Training College. This was in 1978, and I was really quite keen to just walk, because as much as it was spectacular, it also wasn't spectacular. And you know, you do change as the days go by, and you have to get harder and tougher, and you know, but you still got this soft underbelly. John had lured me back in. Not lured, that's wrong. John had been incredibly supportive to me. So to lose John was, that was the end of any naivety. It was very, very evident that my last connection was severed, really. As far as strong affairs of the heart and the Confederacy and stuff had gone.
On the 4th of December 1980, Led Zeppelin announced that with the death of their drummer John Bonham, the band would split.
We don't have to talk about it for too long because it's just such old ground, but it was something that you come away from going, I could never be as good as that in any other place or any other moment than that just happened. And then, you know, you just find some way of getting home.
Plant's long journey home began with a trip to Rockfield, a sound studio on the Welsh borders, to record 2 albums in quick succession. This was Robert Plant 1980s style, suited, booted and ever so slightly sheared. This was Robert Plant out on his own.
If this is entertainment, and if it was entertainment, then it's time to entertain myself. And so I decided to make 2 records really quickly and start to embrace new ideas and new people. And really from that moment on, I decided that I would never let the grass grow under my feet. That I was a man of the world as a player and as a player in every respect. And I really wanted to see what was out there. Shit or bust, it was going to be exactly how I wanted it to be.
Something Plant had to face once he was back in the studio was the absence of his old partner in crime, John Bonham.
To have a drummer, after working with John since I was 16 or whatever, to turn around and see somebody else there, it's kind of a bit of a weird thing to be thinking about. Phil Collins turned up. He'd been such a huge fan of John's work, and he fired every session and blasted the room with butane and energy. He got on everybody's case if people were slack, if it wasn't quite on it. He would be standing up and making points with his drumstick and frowning that frown across the room, which gave me great confidence because, you know, I was still tiptoeing. I was 32 years old. And my career had ended. So anything that came after that was my business. entirely.
When we saw him next in 1982, Robert Plant was a solo artist.
Did it take a lot of courage on your part to actually make a solo album after, what, 10, 12 years?
I guess so. It was a little uncomfortable to begin with. After being with Jimmy for so long and Jonesy and Bonzo, it's really a little weird to walk on and go as a guest or anything like that, you know? So used to working in the confines of one setup.
Is it fair to say now, officially to these people and indeed the nation, that Led Zeppelin will not work together anymore?
No.
It's
won't.
Not fair to say.
It's not fair.
No, they won't work together again.
Yeah.
It's gone.
Plant returned to his teens and his love of American rock and roll vocalists for a third solo album in 1984, recorded with his short-lived all-star band, the Honeydrippers.
It's like, oh, now what's he done? Oh, Planty's done it again. It's like a Just William book or Jennings and Derbyshire. Army Ertigan, who'd signed Zepp to Atlantic and had also happened to sign Ray Charles, Aretha Franklin, the Coasters, the Drifters, Modern Jazz Quartet, John Coltrane, the Iron Butterfly, you know, Crosby, Stole the Stash. I used to go out at night with him and Phil Spector in New York, ran clubs, and we'd end up in a corner inebriated and singing the outros of Gene Vincent songs or maybe touching on a Gene Pitney classic. And he used to say, well, you know, all you do is you've got all this stuff in your head, all this phrasing and vocal stuff. He said, you should do some songs like that. The Honeydrippers thing arrived, and I think I called it Volume 1, because the whole idea of it being there would ever be a Volume 2 was a hoot. I know that people think some of the things that I've done have been a bit sort of, oh God, did you hear his 80s shit? First sort of sampling, the first computerized technology, which sounds so awful now. That 80s thing where we all want to walk the plank. But in truth, I think it's great because I was trying stuff out that you don't go near, you know, and you will never go near again because it was quite horrendous in a way, but at least it was worth a shot.
Throughout the 80s and early 90s, Plant worked with never-changing cast of musicians as part of an open house policy. No longer the isolated singer of his Led Zeppelin days, stranded in the middle of the music, he was becoming a part of the playing. Not a stage-strutting frontman, but a bona fide band leader.
I offer so many ideas and so much input to all the parts and pieces that I'm part of, but it's not always the musician's approach to it, so I have to use humour and I'm delicate. I'm not showing everybody how to do it on a beautiful Martin, you know, and saying, well, then if you do this, so therefore I have to adopt and become this other personality, you know, a kind of self-serving ringmaster.
So throw it down, Cleveland rain. The queen of love has flown again to seek her daughter.
After 10 years apart, Plant and Page reunited in 1994 to reimagine parts of Led Zeppelin's valuable back catalogue. this time working with an Egyptian orchestra and travelling to Marrakesh to collaborate with the local Gnawa tribespeople and musicians. Plant was at last coming to terms with a past that until now he'd attempted to bury.
Personally speaking, I've been wanting to work with Robert for a long time, and we both agreed that we would have to do something that was within a new light. Maybe if we were to do the old numbers, then it would be like possibly set the same picture but within a different frame.
It's quite consoling, really, because I was quite worried about that being a cliche, but when you're doing it...
So give me peace of mind and let me dance. And bury all my pain and years beneath the sand.
To actually change that wah-wah song from their traditional wah-wah, which is a North African top 10 favourite for the last 1,000 years, if you like, and then I wrote these kind of lyrics about, which was substantial enough to work alongside, so we interacted. It was great things to do, and really quite dramatic, and at times quite beautiful. But enough's enough, and so when Strange Sensation first appeared, we could fly by a new flag. The wees inside me were all very pleased.
In 2002, Plant conducted a musical experiment of Frankenstein proportions. The emerging creature was appropriately called the Strange Sensation.
It was almost like a brainstorm every rehearsal.
Created from pieces of Portishead, Massive Attack, Jar Wobble and Cast, the Strange Sensation reignited Plant's solo career and earned him his best reviews since the now distant days of Led Zeppelin.
5 remarkable guys, fantastic melange of music, and every member was coming from another great place.
This is the land where I live, painted all over gold. Take a little sunshine, spread it all around.
I've never seen so many leads, jack plugs, and good intentions in one room ever. It was a workshop for another world, really.
This is the love that I give, and these are the arms for the holding. Turn on your love light, shine it all around. Whoa.
It was that marriage of what I experienced in 1972 in the foothills of the Atlas Mountains. Suddenly, that was there in a room. I mean, I was such a fan of what we were doing. That was probably where I was bound to go as a group member. If anybody would have given me the key to that and said, soon, one day, this is what you're going to sound like, it would have been like...
Surprisingly, Plant's first album with the band was a collection of mostly blues and folk remakes, often important, intimate songs from the soundtrack of his own life, the centrepiece of which was a cover of the Tim Buckley classic, Song to the Siren.
There's covers everywhere. Zeppelin 1 was Otis Rush, Zeppelin 2 was Willie Dixon. I guess with Dreamland, I really, really wanted to touch that psychedelic nerve.
Did I dream? You dreamed about me. Were you here when I was fast? Now my foolish boat is leaning on your arms.
To visit Song to the Siren, some songs you think you can't touch, you know. That particular song is spectacular. I just saw so much of myself in there, you know.
Come back tomorrow.
As I do in quite a lot of songs that I sing of other people's. Mostly, I've got to be in awe of the lyric. And I've got to think that I can't match that.
Waiting to hold you.
But Plant still had a strange, unshakable sensation of his own.
I was kind of Rockaday Johnny in the middle of it as well, and I think that I didn't need to be Rockaday Johnny anymore. If we ever work again, I shall definitely be playing a baritone ukulele.
Strange sensations are often felt more acutely in strange surroundings, and so Plant and his new band sought more exotic places to perform.
Taking that music into Tunisia and playing at night time with the mosque and the minaret illuminated, and the show being opened by Lebanese speed metal bands. It's like the world is opening up. It got me further and further away from the kind of the UK festival scene as we know it, and more into playing with, you know, all those people who you get 45 minutes of absolute beauty.
By now, Plant was venturing far from the well-trodden track of the established attention-hungry rock star. So far, it might have seemed like a flight from fame, a glorious self-imposed exile. In 2005, along with members of Strange Sensation, he journeyed to Mali to play at the Festival in the Desert, the most remote music festival in the world.
Went on a plane which was full of crackpots and extremists. There was a sort of plane that had come out of a comic where we loaded up, and I realized that everybody was going to the same place. We landed somewhere in Irashidia in southern Morocco, and then made our way with a small team from Blue Peter. We were doing a program on the current educational situation in Mali. So they had a little tiny plane that they got from some Christian zealots who ferry people around Africa for a sum of money. So we got on board. We'd followed the river all the way up, so it's desert, 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 and one patch of green. And the patch of green was where Ali Farka Touré had taken his income from the album we made with Rai Kuda and sunk artesian wells in the desert and created a garden of avocados and salads and tomatoes. His contribution back to his people, you know. So we landed and we made our way up towards the festival. 60 kilometers north of Timbuktu, by no roads, nothing at all, just guys driving by the occasional tree that they know.
The rhythms of the Mississippi blues, the trance-like soundscapes of psychedelia, and the vocal expressions of a continent could all be heard in the darkness of the desert night. Everything Robert Plant could have ever wished for.
play with Umu Sangare, amazing singer, and charted, and it's just out of this world for me to actually be able to find something in my back pocket that would fit in amongst all that was just, it was a serendipity. It was fantastic. It's like one of those huge spikes of revelation in your life, in every respect, not just as a performer, but as, you know, a man.
If the tunes of Led Zeppelin were never that far away, the rock god image of its ex-frontman was being buried deep in the desert sands.
I learn every day. I learn that the Rockaday Johnny thing has got to go a bit further back in the box. Keep the lid down on it a bit.
Looking for someone.
Look at people who change for their own stimulation.
I guess I'm doing that.
Look at Peter Gabriel. Peter reinvents on about a 5-year turnaround.
You could have a steam train.
Look at Scott Walker.
Make it easy on yourself.
I mean, I used to open the show for the Walker Brothers when I was about 15 at Kidderminster Town Hall, and you couldn't hear them for the screams of the girls, and Scott was kind of elevated. I'm sure that there was at least 9 inches between his feet and the stage. He just drifted through this miasma of female want. And meanwhile, his van was being festooned with more and more lipstick. In fact, Bonzo and I were so pissed off, we actually got some lipstick and did our own van.
Do I hear 21, 21?
And then Scott moves left and right through Jacques Brel to Farmer in the City to, you know, brilliant.
21, 21.
We'll make the record and we'll never play it again. We'll never listen to it. But he's done it, you know.
21, 21, 21.
2 or 3 times I've played that without medical assistance, and I think it's... Does he care? Is chronology anything to do with it? Not at all.
It used to be said that the song remains the same, but if Plant's music is now in a permanent state of reinvention, we have to seek familiarity elsewhere. Luckily, it seems we can always rely on the presence of those long blonde tresses.
You still got the hair?
I put it on in the car park.
When the music's over.
Cancelled my subscription to the Resurrection. Who said that? Jim Morrison. It's all about that great gang once upon a time when there were some changes to be made, and music actually was a catalyst for a lot of beautiful change.
When the music's over.
That's why sad old hippies still keep their hair long, you know, because we were part of something that meant something more than just, you know, ego and income.
Sad old hippies will also try anything in the spirit of exploration, musical or otherwise. With the exception of one duet sung with Sandy Denny in 1971, Plant's voice had never been entwined with that of a woman. So why not surprise everyone yet again and see what an unlikely partnership with bluegrass star Alison Krauss might produce?
I knew that she was a spectacular singer, but I also knew that she was very delicate and was performing and subscribing to a part of American music that I didn't really get that much. But we had a couple of phone calls which were very humorous, and I realized that she was also somebody who wanted to try something else out, you know. So we shipped ourselves to Cleveland, Ohio, rehearsed a little bit with Justin, and I persuaded Los Lobos to bring their Mexican instruments.
Black girl, don't lie to me. Tell me where did you sleep last night?
If I use the word deep, it's for all the right and best reasons. She's deep. That's what they say down there in Tennessee.
In November 2004, Plant and Krauss debuted their singing partnership at the Cleveland Symphony Hall in a tribute to Leadbelly for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame Museum.
It was an amazing night because it's that thing where you suddenly see all of the things that you've done flying before you and after you and around you, like a cartoon of somebody who's been knocked out, and you see the kind of spiral of stars and exclamation marks, and I'm next to a beautiful woman who can sing like an angel and knows exactly what she wants, and we did it. And I thought, geez, well, what is that? That's got to come back again. This serenity of women, it should be the collective noun for those women down there, a serenity, and you know damn well that's not true.
On paper, it looked like the music industry's #1 nomination for the odd couple category, Robert Plant and Alison Krauss, The Hills of the Black Country and the Hills of Tennessee. Lemon squeezing in Louisiana. Whatever next?
She kind of nurtured me through this thing because she liked the idea of my voice and hers, because we obviously knew it worked. Tonally and personality-wise, the two voices really did blend great. But I got a lot to learn. Hey presto, I was born again.
There's a high. Hear it?
It's working on it right now.
Okay.
And I want whatever she tried to get rid of.
It was incredibly nerve-wracking, because the challenge is, can an old dog ever learn a new trick?
Some sunny day, baby, when everything seems okay, baby, you wake up and find that you're alone, 'cause I'll be gone.
Over an 8-month period, Plant, Krauss and their producer-guitarist T-Bone Burnett assembled a delicate mix of country songs, lesser-known R&B numbers, blues and folk for what became a Grammy-gobbling album.
Every night we discussed more and more music, and more and more and more and more. And the doors kept opening, and the CDs kept flying out, and the downloads kept coming in.
Bollocks!
Because I knew about American music, but I didn't know about mountain music.
Oh, sister, let's go down to the river to pray.
I didn't know about the hills of Tennessee, about the whole twang and the sourness of their harmonies.
But I don't worry, honey. Let them say what they may. Come on and stay with me, baby. We'll find a way.
You did a real good job.
And I love you, honey. Will you work with me again?
No sooner had a country-style Robert Plant arrived in the autumn of 2007 than Led Zeppelin reformed for a one-off tribute concert to mark the passing of Atlantic Records' Armand Ertegun in December. The world now had many Plants to contend with.
For me, it's kind of like that Christmas feeling where it's like, you know, Santa Claus is coming and you're like a child waiting for the biggest present you've ever waited for in your whole life.
Having not played together publicly for over 2 decades, Zeppelin took to the stage, albeit without John Bonham. But behind the drums sat his only son, Jason. This was one of the most coveted tickets in rock history. Zeppelin stormed the O2, and the $64,000 question started to rear its ugly head again.
Robert Plant came in thinking we weren't going to ask him the same question everyone else has asked him, but we're going to ask him anyway. Can we dim the lights, please, and have some appropriate music? Thank you very much. Name, Robert Plant. Occupation, rock god. Are Led Zeppelin going to go on tour?
Steve Bull is now the manager of Stafford Rangers. His first home game is on Saturday. Please turn up. They say there's going to be 3,000 or 4,000, and he's buying a striker to... Good night.
Is that a yes or a no?
I feel a funny feeling coming on.
That was a no.
You should have been a politician with that inability to answer a question directly. Listen, it's been great having you on, and Lucy.
Plant and Alison Krauss have yet to repeat their runaway success together. Krauss returned to her bluegrass roots, but Plant was on a roll. He returned to Tennessee and created an entirely new band, this time in collaboration with Emmylou Harris's guitarist Buddy Miller and featuring guest singer-songwriter Patty Griffin. Plant christened them the Band of Joy, his nod to a pre-Led Zeppelin past while restlessly moving on, again.
2 hours ago when I started talking to you, I said, you know, that we were in it, shit or bust. And the Band of Joy was, you know, no matter what, we believed. So therefore, we played accordingly with great extravagance and aplomb and self-indulgence and bah! And I really felt as we started to develop this record that in a kind of more mature way, I was doing yet the same thing again in a way.
Tonight you will be mine. Tonight the monkey.
Subtlety in this is the counterpoint to the bravado in the original Band of Joy. It's the same deal, but it's a bit more internal. Since going to Tennessee, I've heard the most spectacular songwriters. And I was kind of fishing out beautiful little pieces of other people's work and twisting them around a bit with such remarkable musical company.
Tonight the monkey.
I played the Hardly Strictly Bluegrass Festival twice in the last 3 years. A 3-day event which is open to everyone. They say that 750,000 people move through it. There are 5 stages, and you've got pure bluegrass, country, rockabilly, singer-songwriters. It's just amazing. And in the middle of it all stands Ralph Stanley singing "Oh Death," you know, and you go, how did I miss that for all those years? It's amazing.
Oh, death. Oh, death. Won't you spare me over till another year?
30 years ago, Led Zeppelin crashed and burned. Since then, Robert Plant has wrestled the singular image of a stage-straddling rock god to emerge as a man of many selves, hell-bent on exploring all of them.
Now, it's got to be right, and it's got to be right in a very casual and easy way. Meanwhile, that over there was fine, but, you know, this is serious stuff, and I'm pretty intense, so I've got to unhitch some of that stuff get it spot on in 2010, you know. When I was a kid, I thought that Robert Johnson had got the whole world sewn up with his lyrics. The kind of sexual innuendo and stuff like that. Because it was a hoot. It was funny, but it was very clever, you know, and it was fine, all fine, all fine, all fine. But to actually make those work later in life, I think you either have to be prepared to go into character or, in many respects, shelve it. My grandfather was a musician, my great-grandfather was a musician. They formed really important black country brass bands, you know, which had posh names but were usually known as the Dudley Port Drinking Band. It goes on and on and on. The only difference was they were playing Sousa marches and there was no Squeeze My Lemon involved, you know. The only thing they had to change was their tunics as their portage increased. We have to just make sure that we change our mind enough to make it worthwhile, you know. Whether it's an incredibly dreadful performance at Live Aid or an evening in Mali or the Country Music Awards on CMT, whatever it is, they're moments. And if I like the idea of it and I can talk myself into these positions, I'm going to do it because it's just crazy. How many me's are there?
Stay with us. In an hour, Robert Plant on Later with performances from Jules Holland's show from the early 90s onwards. That's after songs from the hit album Band of Joy recorded for the Electric Proms. Next here on BBC Two.